Today we're going to talk about the book of Job. Now, Job takes us into a new place in the Hebrew Scriptures. Job is the first book in the section of writings that are predominantly referred to as either the wisdom literature or the poetical books. So Job's content is not necessarily concerned with laws as we saw in the Pentateuch or the establishment of Israel as a nation, but it is dealing with more of these real-world problems that everyone seems to face. So Job is written about the principal character who is named Job. He's a righteous man who suffers some hardships at the hands of God. Most modern scholars believe that the work is written by an anonymous Jewish author, but the traditional or rabbinic take was that Moses actually wrote the book. If modern scholars are correct, the time period for the writing of the book probably occurred sometime between the 7th century BCE and the 4th century BCE, with most modern scholars concluding that the 6th century is the preferable time period. So Job is broken down into 4 sections if you're thinking in terms of an outline. The first section occurring in chapters 1 and 2, which deals with conversations that occur in the divine realm. In chapters 1 and 2, you have these conversations between God and the Satan character in reference to Job. And in the second section, which comprises most of the book, chapters 3 through 31, you experience 3 cycles of dialogue that occur between Job and his 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. The third section in the book is chapters 32 through 37, which introduces a 4th character known as Elihu. He's a young man who tries to refute what he has been listening to for the last 28 chapters. And then finally, the book concludes with the section chapters 38 through 42, where God speaks and Job responds to what God has to say. If you're thinking about themes that you want to keep in your mind as you read, the first and most notable theme is the problem of evil. In Christian language and theological terms, we would call this a theodicy. And so the question that the book of Job is really dealing with is, why do the righteous suffer? We learn early on in the narrative that Job is an upright and righteous man. He's considered blameless. And when the Satan figure shows up, God asks him what he thinks about his servant Job, and Satan tries to get God to believe that the only reason Job worships him is because he's blessed him so abundantly. And so he challenges God that if God will take all of his wealth and possessions and his family away from him, that Job would curse him. And so we enter into this question of, why do the righteous suffer? Because Job does not do what the Satan figure thinks he would do. Then we deal with the theme of retributive justice. So in Judaism and ancient Near Eastern religions, this is the principle that God brings punishment to the wicked. And so you're going to get into these dialogues in the book of Job where Job's friends try to convince Job that he must have some sort of secret sin that he's holding on to, or he's lying about his righteousness, because surely God would not bring this sort of condemnation upon Job unless there was sin involved. Yet Job maintains his innocence throughout the entire episode. And then third, we're going to deal with divine wisdom. Job demands that God give an account for why God has treated Job so poorly in spite of his righteousness. And then God shows up and utters phrases to Job repeatedly like, "Where were you?" As in, where were you when I created the foundations of the world? So the God figure in the text indicates that God's wisdom is above the wisdom of humanity. Our ways are not like God's ways, and God's ways are not like our ways. His ways are unscrutable, and we may not understand everything because we don't see everything from God's perspective. So like most books in the Bible, Job is not going to wrap everything up nicely with a nice bow on top. You will not leave reading the book of Job knowing why the righteous suffer and why good things happen to bad people and why bad things end up happening to good people. But it does help us see, and it reminds us that indeed God is beyond our comprehension, and God's wisdom is beyond that of humanity's. So remember, we're reading these texts Christologically. Don't walk away thinking that God is willy-nilly or that God on a whim will punish you because God feels like it. God has revealed the depths of love to us in Jesus Christ. So slog through it. There's beautiful poetic language. You will be able to immerse yourself in the depths and riches of this book, and I pray that your reading proves fruitful.